I loved my first play session of the new Warzone, and if you saw that first game and my impressions of it, well, sniping is back. Velocity is insanely fast, and of course, it can one-shot headshot without having to put on any silly attachments like explosive, ruining a bunch of other stuff. But that first shot that I took of a player in air connecting, well, it left me in a great mood, and I'm excited to say the least. But after the event, everyone wants to know now, what are my first thoughts on it? Well, finally, that video is here, and I've isolated it down to my biggest points. If there's anything that I missed, you have thoughts on, agree or disagree with what I have to say today as well, let me know below. But please keep it simple so we can have a conversation. I am looking forward to what you guys have to say. First up, more awareness is now being rewarded. Overall, this game is shifting more towards a skill game, a skill gap, which can be concerning a bit, especially if you're not that great at the game. But it also allows you to have something more to work towards, as well as can lead to a lot crazier, flashier clips. I mean, just look at the sniping. You may have heard people mentioning or seen them mention red dots are back. This means on the TAC map, if you shoot a weapon when you are unsuppressed, that red dot will appear, showing if you're above, below, your exact position will be revealed. This has been a staple in Call of Duty outside of the last couple years with Warzone 2, meaning there's going to be much more emphasis on suppressors in the game, and building up the skill of reading the map is going to pay off for you. Likewise, Ghost will only work if you are moving. Sitting in a bathroom with Ghost will no longer keep you safe. You're still going to need the stealth vest. Overall, it's going to give you more control in the game. Less BS ways of dying when you're having a good game is going to feel better, which we saw when they added a gulag change in Warzone 2 where it made it 2v2. There was a juggernaut in the middle. Of course, they reverted all of that back to how it was in the first game, but they've cleaned it back up to 1v1 symmetrical maps, something I disliked about Al Mazrah. And of course, no AI. It is a rappel line that comes down in the middle, which I attempted and of course failed against one of the winners of World Series of Warzone. Who would have figured? I didn't pull that one off. But a much better change with the gulag this time, adding random events that can occur like NVGs required, a night map, even more fun, a cash bonus where you just get tons of cash all over the floor. In my eyes, the gulag should be hard. It should be punishing and also rewarding then when you can actually bring your skill out and win. After, of course, you died and lost, but at least you still have another chance, especially for solos. It's great. And while that skill ceiling is going up, it's not necessarily going all the way back to what it was in Warzone 1, specifically talking about the movement here. The best way I can describe it is it felt like I had more freedom with my character. I wasn't locked into as many animations with the ability to cancel them, as well as just faster overall interactions. Zip lines you immediately notice, you grab on and start flying up. And of course, the changes they made in Warzone 2 where you can have multiple people on at the same time and being able to grab it mid-flight is all there. There's also horizontal lines, which felt phenomenal. Seems like such a small change, but it avoids you having to go down, climb a bunch of stairs, find another vertical zip. Likewise, with rotations, the redeploys send you so much further, even the portable one, which is different than the pocket balloon from Warzone 1, allowing your whole team and even anybody else to rotate. This is just for the individual and helps with the rotations. And speaking of control, you can also control the train that you can make go even faster, stop completely, has a UAV buy station on it. There's controls at the front and back of it, although if you lock it in the back, you do have to go to the back in order to unlock it and make it move again. Overall, it's just better and increased options for mobility, both on a bigger scale, rotating, as well as on an individual scale, which does directly affect the gameplay, but your overall experience of it outside of just the player was also affected by the gun and, of course, the way you fight. The visual recoil feels so much more like the original game, where what you are seeing is what you can also control. Visual recoil has been so bad for the last year that I haven't even really run any optic outside of just a normal red dot, and that's why you see all these aim op users. Visually, it's just all over the place. You can't really tell what's happening or where you even need to control it, even if the recoil pattern on the wall that you're looking at is not that bad. It's awesome to be able to shoot while you're sliding, although it does take it to the canted fire. To me, they should allow you to stay with your normal ADS unless that's specifically what you're trying to do if you're using an LMG or some farther range gun, but at least you can shoot. You still can't shoot when you're dolphin diving, but when you land, the gun does come up quicker to shoot, but you have the freedom to reload cancel at any point. They did adjust it a little bit in the current game where If your mag is still partially in, you can cancel it if it's early enough. Now, it's just at any point you can cancel the reload, how it has traditionally always been in COD. And I do think there is some realism breaking that happens with that I don't mind how they had changed it, but this felt a lot better when you're actually playing the game, at least in my opinion, after having played both of these extensively. And I think one of my favorite changes when it comes to guns is that you always have a pistol. Swimming in water, climbing ladders, ledge hanging, you get that starter pistol that feels really good as well. You can shoot it even faster, good size mag on it. You can fight with it. Still not going to beat an AR SMG the majority of the time, but you can fight. They also have some new streaks and even utility that you can use. The one that stood out the most to me was the paper airplane looking breacher drone you can throw in any direction. It goes in a straight line and blows up when it gets in proximity of an enemy. This might finally get me to stop using semtexes or even throwing knives and have a good alternative we could use. And there's surprisingly a lot of new perks. 3 of them that they mentioned was Resolute, where you run faster when you're hurt, which I like better than them adding Serpentine, where you run faster and take less damage. Glad that's not back. Shrouded, you drop a smoke when you get knocked. Irradiated, move faster and take less damage when you are specifically in the gas. But there was a couple other ones that I noticed on these packages that they didn't mention. Escapist, Primed, Mountain, which is a parachute, and a cross on it. I'm hoping not referencing me and splatting, although that seems to be the unanimous thought coming from my comment section so far. Sidewinder, as well as Shrapnel, which gave an extra lethal, at least in the past. There's also aftermarket parts for guns, which I didn't get to use, but the idea is you can turn a pistol into a submachine gun. Don't need to run overkill. It gives you alternative ways to run a gun that it's not really how it's supposed to be. And I think that's more of a potential balancing issue, but we'll add more variety to the gameplay and content we could do for sure. With all of the quality of life updates they've done over the last year for Warzone 2, a lot of those have just been re-adding all of the things that they took away from the game to make it come out in the first place. Starting health is back to 150. Big game bounties are back. There's no more AI, at least outside of the black site. Stims now give you a speed boost. Ammo is now dedicated to its own slots. It's not going to be filling your bag, constantly having to drop it on the ground. Buy stations, you could just buy a loadout. UAV, and they're of infinite supply. Although there are still items that have some exclusivity per buy station that you could buy. There was some good updates they added in Warzone 2 that are staying as well. Strongholds, black sites themselves, vests that you can pick up to get some of the extra perks that you probably wouldn't ever typically choose yourself, or big ones like Ghost that you would. And of course, yes, proximity chat. I ran into this in a couple games where I heard other people talking. They're keeping it. I feel like I shouldn't even have to mention those, but because we got so much of it removed from the last one, yes, and thank you. I think at least we're finally at a point of where I wish Warzone 2 would have come out, where we already have these things in it and we could just continue to move forwards. But I think we're at the point where we continue to move forwards. And there has been some really cool additions that also happen to the game, like perk packages, where you could just pick your load up on the ground, and these things that they have added that they are also extending by now adding icons and UI color coding to help you more quickly differentiate what you're looting, even the contracts you're going after. And I think if you've played this game as much as I have, or even not, and you've just continued to play it over this last year, or played the original game, you're going to see a lot of improvements from where it originally was for the overall landscape. Although I can't speak the same way about the menus. The big takeaway for me on all of this, though, is that we are getting a ton of new content between, obviously, the new guns, aftermarket parts for them, a gigantic map that is very dense if you saw my flyover of it, but we're also retaining all of the old guns. This is something that we were familiar with going into Cold War and Vanguard, and even them bringing back some of the old content with Rebirth Island coming back, as well as Fortune's Keep, which I thought was a fantastic map. They didn't even tell us about that one. That was a surprise that I realized while I was streaming, and they revealed that information. There's going to be a lot of content. All of this that I've mentioned is just the free content. You could still get multiplayer for those maps, zombies, campaign, if you're interested in all of it. But to me, this is where a lot more of my excitement and interest has been. So then, what are some of the worries? Is there any? Well, it's not going completely back to what we saw with Warzone 1. When you are slide canceling, which of course is back, you can cancel that slide at any point. There is a slight delay before you can sprint again. I am a fan of this. I don't want to be constantly sliding everywhere. Your tac sprint will automatically recharge. We know a lot of this, but that all felt good to me in game. I'm also just more used to it now, but bunny hopping is not back. I heard some players complaining about where you can jump and then perpetually keep your momentum and continue jumping. You can really only do that for one hop at the most. And I think the people who want the super high skill are going to be more concerned with it. Likewise, Combat Scout is coming back. This being the perk, if you get a hit marker on somebody, their entire body is outlined, giving you essentially wall hacks on them for you and your team to just beam. And speaking of hacks, we didn't really see anything about Ricochet anti-cheat, which they continue to give us a lot of updates on. And I will say, there has been good improvements over the last year, at least from what I see, but I have not been playing a ton of ranked. And I just did a video with some people hacking, getting above the map. So it's definitely not all there, and I don't think ever will be realistically in a free-to-play game. But I saved one of the biggest points for last, which is the gas mask. The way it works now is you will put this gas mask on as soon as you pick it up, giving you somewhat of a vignette on the edge of your screen. And I gotta say, after looking at this as well as playing it, it is very minor, and it's not going to block your field of view. That is a win. It seemed like the way they were talking about it, they wanted to be more of a manual experience, but because the gas mask is already on, the only real thing you could do is stow it, and it stows into your bag, taking up a slot. And if the gas mask is on the ground in your bag, it's still going to tick away. So ideally, you just put this on and leave it on, which is great that it's not going to get in your way if you're in a gunfight. I do think overall reducing the amount of need to even deal with it is better. But I think if the goal was to make it a more manual thing that you could try and game and get a little finesse and skill off of, they're probably going to have to do it a different way. There's probably a better way of doing it that you could just turn it off and on without having it to even use a slot. But I also didn't have that much opportunity to really try it. We only played for a couple of hours. And I think overall, a lot of people are just more concerned that, well, what's really even changing about this game? And to that, I'd say this is what they did with Cold War and Vanguard. They did a big update to the game. Heck, even when Cold War came out, they really didn't give us a new map. They just altered their existing one and made it go back in time. This is a complete new map after a year of Al Mazrah, which I think could stay and even have a rotation between the maps would be awesome. But nonetheless, this is a lot of new content, especially if you just play the free version of the game, which is what I mainly do. And from everything that I've listed, especially if you've been playing this game, these are a lot of great changes. Now, we'll see how it actually feels once this is out, and if this implements a whole bunch of game-breaking other bugs, that I would likely expect, and you'd probably want to wait a week before you play it. Although, let's be real, we're going to play it. Overall, it has me very excited. The stories even of what the fights we got into felt like they were coming back of what you used to talk about of the crazy game, the ending you had in Verdansk. Maybe not as much on Caldera of some guy sitting in a bush killing you. But of course, I played this at a giant event that they went over the top on. I saw so many of my friends I had such a great time at. You may have seen my posts on. This is one of my absolute favorite parts of the job, is getting to see some of this stuff a little early. But get a good sniper in my hand, it's going to be hard for me to have a bad time, especially with the boys. But with that, let me know what you think, and thanks so much for watching.